By the time her Lexus turned into a $60,000 campfire, the air smelled like burning plastic, scorched paint, and justice, and I'll be honest with you. I stood there watching those orange flames lick up the side of her luxury eco-friendly lifestyle and thought, yeah, that's exactly what happens when you try to bully the wrong electrician. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 45, and for 20 years I've wired everything from greasy diners to high-end custom homes around Mesa Ridge, Arizona, but nothing fried my nerves like moving into a supposedly peaceful HOA neighborhood called Cedar Grove Meadows and running headfirst into one woman with a title, a clipboard, and absolutely no brakes on her ego. Her name? Vanessa Crowley. Newly crowned HOA president, freshly divorced, luxury real estate agent, leased Lexus hybrid, corner house with magazine cover landscaping, and a smile that felt like a sales pitch wrapped around a threat. After my own divorce blew my life apart, I was rebuilding from the ground up, living in a modest 3-bedroom ranch, 2 teenagers splitting time between my place and their moms, ramen dinners, discount coffee, counting every mile of gas, and obsessively saving for one dream I could control, an electric car that would stop bleeding my paycheck at the pump. 2 years later, I finally snagged a used 2019 Tesla Model 3, and for the first time since the divorce papers, I felt like I was driving towards something instead of away from everything. Being an electrician, installing a proper level 2 charger on the side of my house was easy, but I still did everything by the book. Permits pulled, inspections passed, GFCI protection, load calculations, clean conduit runs, the whole thing. When I flipped that breaker and heard that soft hum, smelled that faint ozone of fresh connections, it felt like freedom wired into the wall. That lasted exactly one day. The next afternoon, I heard the sharp click of heels on asphalt, turned, and saw Vanessa Crowley walking up my driveway like she already owned it, HOA folder tucked under her arm, lips stretched into that polished realtor smile. Ethan, I love seeing environmentally conscious upgrades in Cedar Grove Meadows, she purred, eyes locked on my charger like a hawk spotting a rabbit. It would be wonderful if eco-conscious neighbors could share resources, don't you think? I explained, as calmly as I could, that residential chargers are sized for one home, one vehicle, specific load calculations, safety protocols, all that boring stuff that keeps houses from burning down, and that letting random people plug in whenever they felt like it wasn't safe or reasonable. Her smile flickered, like a dying fluorescent tube, and the tone changed instantly. You know, the Architectural Review Committee has standards, and modifications like this usually require approval and fees. We'd hate for something to impact property values. The taste in my mouth went metallic. I'd seen this type before on job sites and in courtrooms, people who wrap threats in the word community. That night, instead of stewing, I did what I do best, research. I dug through Arizona HOA statutes, pulled up case law, and there it was, black and white. State law explicitly protecting EV charging stations on private property. Our original covenants for Cedar Grove Meadows even encouraged renewable energy. So when, a week later, an official HOA letter landed in my mailbox demanding a $200 architectural modification fee, threatening daily fines, and claiming my charger violated aesthetic standards that didn't exist anywhere in the documents, I already had my counterpunch ready. The HOA management company had no clue any of this was official business. The city confirmed every permit was clean. My attorney buddy, Noah Briggs, skimmed the letter, laughed, and said, "Someone's broke and trying to shake the trees." The next board meeting, I walked into that musty little community room armed like a lawyer, printed statutes, permits, photos. When Vanessa tried to make my charger sound like a nuclear reactor in the cul-de-sac, I stood up, read the state law out loud, laid my paperwork on the table, and finished with, "This installation is legal, protected, and inspected. Full stop." Her face went through every color on the warning label, pink, red, purple, and then she snapped, accused me of intimidation, and stormed out, heels hammering the tile like an angry metronome. That's when her cute little power trip turned into a campaign. Anonymous complaints to city code enforcement. False reports to the utility company about hazardous wiring. Whispered nonsense to neighbors about electromagnetic interference and fire risks. Each inspector came out, took one look, shook their head, and gave me the same advice. Document everything. This is harassment. So I did. I installed a full security camera system, driveway, charger, front yard. Every angle covered. The satisfying click of those mounts snapping into place felt like installing a breaker on her insanity. Then, one day in the grocery store, between cheap cereal and dented cans, Vanessa cornered me, blocking my cart with hers, breath sweet with expensive perfume and desperation. "Ethan, I have medical appointments. I need reliable transportation. My condition is very sensitive to gas fumes. We could share your charger, split the electricity, 50-50. That's more than fair." Her Lexus hybrid probably gets better mileage than my entire truck fleet, but she leaned in with that low voice, slipping in the threat. Lawsuits, property values, litigation history, following my address forever. I should have walked away, but when someone talks about medical emergencies, the human part of you reacts faster than the logical part. A couple days later, she shows up at my door, sobbing about her daughter having some medical crisis out of town, needing an emergency charge, just this once. I caved, gave her my charging access code. My cameras captured the truth. Not a hospital. A luxury salon downtown. 3 hours of pampering. And before she left my driveway, perfectly styled and glowing, the footage shows her photographing my control panel, zooming in on settings, examining connections like she was planning a heist. That was the moment the anger stopped feeling like irritation and started feeling like voltage building in a line. Because from there, Vanessa Crowley went from petty to dangerous. Insurance complaints claiming my charger endangered the entire block. Calls to environmental agencies alleging electromagnetic pollution. Threats to report me to the IRS for operating a commercial charging business with one car and one driveway. And underneath all of it, that same metallic taste of something worse coming. The gut feeling every electrician gets right before a circuit fails. The first sign that she'd crossed into physical sabotage was tiny. A charging cable wrapped differently than I'd left it, a connector slightly out of place, the weather cover hanging just a bit looser than it should. Little things you could blame on the wind, or kids, or your own memory, if you wanted to. But my job has taught me one rule. When something feels off around electricity, you treat it like a bomb until you know otherwise. I checked the footage. There she was, Vanessa, creeping up my driveway near midnight, flashlight in hand, crouching over my charging station like she was defusing a warhead instead of messing with a residential circuit. She tugged at the cover, removed screws, poked at connections, testing what she could tamper with without leaving obvious damage. That's when I stopped trying to be neighborly and filed a police report. Officer Daniel Brooks, who'd already dealt with her nonsense on other noise complaints in the neighborhood, watched the footage, sighed like a man who'd seen this movie before, and said, "Textbook escalation. Keep your cameras running, and if she touches anything electrical again, we're not talking about HOA drama, we're talking felonies." I posted a neutral, carefully worded message in our neighborhood Facebook group. "Someone has been tampering with private electrical equipment at night. For everyone's safety, please report suspicious activity. No names. No drama." The responses rolled in like a storm. Arthur and Linda Hayes, the older couple down the street, mentioned Vanessa had been harassing Arthur about his weekend woodworking tools. The Young family, the Miller family, shared that she'd interrogated them about their kids' swing set and sidewalk chalk, claiming imaginary rules. More people quietly messaged me, all with the same theme. She'd made herself judge, jury, and executioner of community standards that didn't exist. Then Arthur Hayes showed up at my garage one evening, clutching a manila envelope like it was radioactive. His wife Linda works part-time for Hayes Community Management, the company that handles our HOA. She'd stumbled onto something. Inside were financial records that made my skin crawl more than any exposed conductor. Almost $47,000 in surplus funds sitting in HOA accounts, and a mysterious $12,000 legal consultation paid to Bradley and Stokes LLP, the exact firm handling Vanessa's divorce. No board vote. No homeowner notice. She'd been using HOA money as her personal war chest. Buried in the original covenants, Arthur had highlighted a line that hit me like a breaker slamming shut. Our developer had encouraged renewable energy, solar, EV chargers, the works. Not just allowed. Encouraged. Noah Briggs, my lawyer friend, connected the dots. laid out phrases I'd only heard in passing before: tortious interference with property rights, breach of fiduciary duty, embezzlement exposure. And then Arthur dropped the real bomb. Annual elections were in a month, and it took just 5 homeowners' signatures to force a challenge for the presidency. "I'm running," he said, voice steady. "And we're going to drag every one of her dirty tricks into the light." We built a coalition like I'd wire a complex system, every connection deliberate, every load shared. Arthur would be the public face, the calm grandfatherly neighbor no one could accuse of being hostile. Linda quietly gathered official financials from the management company. The Millers handled social media and neighbor outreach. Noah prepared legal options and complaints, just in case the ballot box wasn't enough. I organized the evidence the only way I knew how: timelines, labeled footage, printed statutes, a spreadsheet tracking every false report, every late-night trespass, every dollar that didn't add up. While we were planning, Vanessa escalated again. One night, I came home from a long job rewiring a commercial kitchen and froze in my driveway. My charging cable was lying in 2 pieces, copper guts exposed, ends frayed and ugly. The smell of burnt metal hanging in the desert air like a warning. This wasn't messing with screws. This was a 240-volt lifeline cut with deliberate force, sharp enough to kill a kid, start a fire, or knock out power if it shorted. The cameras caught every second. Vanessa, at 2:17 a.m., wire cutters in hand, sweating and swearing as she hacked through thick cable, then kicking the severed pieces in frustration when they didn't explode like they do in movies. Detective Lauren Chavez from the county watched the footage with a professional calm that barely hid how furious she was. "This is felony property destruction and reckless endangerment," she said. "If someone had touched those wires, we'd be planning a funeral." They traced the purchase of the exact cutters to Vanessa. Same day, receipt pulled out of her own trash on the curb. When I posted a safety warning, with the police's blessing, about someone cutting live cables in the neighborhood, the reaction was nuclear. Parents were horrified, neighbors furious. Noah filed for a restraining order. The county inspector, Thomas Hale, came out, again, because Vanessa filed more fake complaints. He shut her down on my driveway, telling her in front of witnesses that my installation was textbook and that filing false reports could get her charged. Local reporter Kelly Morgan from Channel 12 Action News called next. She'd seen the police report, smelled the story. HOA president targets Tesla owner, cuts live wires. Vanessa threatened to sue the station, which only made it juicier. By then, our petition to remove her from office had enough signatures to force an emergency HOA meeting, and our annual election was shaping up like a suburban civil war. And yet, as bad as cutting live wires was, Vanessa Crowley still hadn't reached her breaking point. That came with a gallon of paint. I woke up one night to my phone buzzing with motion alerts and the sharp, chemical sting of paint fumes drifting through the bedroom window, and every instinct I had screamed that nothing good ever happens when you smell fresh paint at 1 a.m. On the camera feed, I saw Vanessa in my driveway, bathed in infrared, holding a can of white latex like it was holy water, slowly dumping it over my replacement charging station, the one I'd installed after she cut the first cable, letting thick paint pour over connectors, seep into ports, pool around the base. To an electrician, that sight is pure horror. Paint and electricity don't mix. They corrode, they short, they ignite. I called 911. Officer Brooks arrived to find her still on my property, still holding the empty can, hands and clothes smeared white like she'd lost a fight with a paint mixer. She actually tried to claim she was documenting safety violations while standing next to equipment she'd just sabotaged. He arrested her on the spot. Criminal mischief, trespassing, violation of the restraining order. Her booking photo hit local groups within hours. Kelly Morgan's piece aired, and suddenly Vanessa's carefully curated luxury agent persona was competing with headlines calling her an HOA vigilante and wire-cutting president. An emergency HOA meeting packed our tiny community room. Arthur Hayes presented the financial misconduct. Linda backed it with records. I laid out the harassment timeline and electrical sabotage. And when the vote came to remove Vanessa from the board, not a single hand rose in her defense. But the real finale, the one you clicked on this video for, came 3 weeks later at the annual HOA meeting, the night her Lexus turned into a cautionary tale. The community center was stuffed. 47 homeowners in a room built for 20. Local news cameras in the back. 2 officers posted at the door because nobody trusted Vanessa to accept defeat quietly. I'd prepared a full presentation. Timelines, charts, clips of her cutting cables, pouring paint, screaming at inspectors. Because if we were going to end this, I wanted the record crystal clear. Halfway through my presentation, the door slammed open and there she was, Vanessa Crowley, hair disheveled, makeup streaked, waving a folder like a weapon, violating the restraining order in front of cops, cameras, and half the neighborhood. She ranted about conspiracies, claimed I'd turned the community against her, accused everyone of eco-terrorism, and tried to shout over her own face projected on the screen, cutting my cable at 2:17 a.m. The officers warned her. The room watched. I kept talking, letting her behavior prove my case better than any chart. Finally, she snapped, stormed out of the meeting, and that's when things went from chaotic to cinematic. Through the windows, we saw her march across the parking lot toward my freshly installed community area Tesla charger, dragging her Lexus hybrid along with her like she was dragging her ego to the gallows. "This equipment is dangerous," she screamed to anyone who'd listen, including the news cameras that happily followed. "I'll show you what he's been hiding." Her hybrid wasn't even designed for that charger, but she forced the connector into the port anyway, shoving past safety mechanisms. Then, because bad decisions love company, she held down the emergency override while the system tried to shut itself down. If you've ever wondered what happens when you mix electrical incompatibility, override abuse, and pure arrogance, here's your answer. The charger screamed with warnings, lights flashing red. Then sparks burst from the port like the 4th of July, followed by the sickening hiss of frying electronics, the sharp bite of melting plastic, and in seconds, flames. Her Lexus hybrid's battery went up like a bonfire, heat rippling across the asphalt, smoke billowing into the desert night. The same woman who'd spent months shrieking about safety hazards, now standing 10 feet from the very inferno she created. Fire trucks screamed in, hoses roared, neighbors stared in stunned silence as $60,000 worth of status symbol collapsed into a blackened shell. She left in an ambulance, babbling about sabotage and conspiracies, while everyone else watched the physical embodiment of her choices burn under floodlights. When the flames were out and the smoke thinned, I turned to the crowd, heart pounding, and said, "This is what happens when someone cares more about control than about safety, more about winning than about being right. Electric vehicles aren't the danger. People who abuse power are." They applauded, and for once it wasn't about me. It was about all of us finally cutting the power to her reign. The aftermath was as relentless as current through copper. Vanessa pled guilty to avoid jail, but she ate thousands in restitution for my destroyed equipment and community remediation. My civil harassment suit settled for enough to install more chargers and help with my kids' college books. Her real estate license was revoked after the ethics board watched the same footage you've just heard about. The HOA's relationship with her was terminated. She sold her corner house at a painful loss and fled to a complex in another city where, hopefully, someone's actually watching the president. Arthur Hayes was elected HOA president in a landslide. Dues dropped after he killed her creative accounting. We used that hidden surplus to add more EV chargers, upgrade the pool systems, and start a small green tech scholarship. Our community got featured in the regional paper as a model for sustainable neighborhoods. My little side hustle, helping homeowners fight abusive HOAs over renewable energy, exploded. I even got a call from a guy in Kansas whose solar panels were under attack from another president with a god complex. Turns out, these stories aren't rare, they're just usually quiet. So yeah, that Lexus fire you saw in the title? It wasn't an accident, it wasn't sabotage from some mysterious enemy. It was the final chapter of one person's obsession colliding with hard reality and a system that finally pushed back. And now I'll ask you what I ask at the end of every video like this. Not just for engagement, but because I want you thinking. If your HOA president, or your neighbor, or your boss started abusing their tiny bit of power the way Vanessa Crowley did, cutting corners, cutting wires, cutting people down, where would you draw the line? And when does standing up for your rights stop being revenge and start becoming simple, necessary justice?